NFL regular season coming to a close, which means we are getting closer and closer to the NFL draft. And that means that Ryan Wilson is releasing his latest mock draft. Here's his first round picks. He's got QB Bryce Young going number 1 overall to Houston, number 2 Jalen Carter to the Chicago Bears, number 3 edge Will Anderson Jr. to Seattle. And one of the most recent names to declare for the draft, Texas running back Bijan Robinson. He said he's going to skip the Alamo Bowl against Washington on December 29th, but will attend to support his team. Robinson won the Doak Walker Award as the nation's top running back this season, rushing for nearly 1,600 yards and 18 touchdowns for the Longhorns. Now, in Ryan's latest mock draft, Robinson goes number 19 overall to the Tampa Bay Bucs. Here's more from Robinson on his decision.
It was definitely a hard decision. And for me, being a running back, it's smart to, keep the wheels on your body, fresh, when you do want to go to the NFL. And
more common back then.
I thought that this was just, the perfect time to go endure that for sure.
And here's a look at picks 11 through 20 on Ryan Wilson's mock draft. You see Bijan Robinson there going 19 overall to the Bucs. Some other notable names. He's got Joey Porter Jr. from Penn State going number 14 to the Steelers. And a guy that we like to talk about, I feel like to the end of time, Ryan Wilson and I, Anthony Richardson, QB from Florida. He's got him going 15 now to the Seahawks. And let's welcome in Ryan Wilson joining us here, Brady Quinn at CBS Sports HQ to talk about the NFL draft. And Ryan, your latest mock draft, I promise I will cut back on the Anthony Richardson talk for once, which is a big step in the right direction for me. Brady, I don't know if you know this, but literally every time Ryan and I are together, we somehow bring up AR.
Well, he's a polarizing player.
Yes.
There's going to be teams that fall in love with him. There's going to be some teams that say, hey, maybe he needs a little more development, not the guy for us. But It'll be interesting to see where he goes.
All right, let's talk about one of the recent big names, Bijan Robinson, declaring for the draft. Where is he among the running backs in this class? Ryan, we'll start with you.
Okay, this is going to be interesting. I want to hear what Brady has to say about this. I have him as running back 1B behind Jahmyr Gibbs, who's a completely different player out of Alabama. Jahmyr Gibbs reminds me a little bit more of Alvin Kamara and Dalvin Cook. Bijan Robinson is more your old school bruising running back. That has to do a ton in the pass game. He can certainly do those things. But when you think of what Bijan Robinson does, he takes me back to sort of the Sean Alexander of running backs. Has a little bit of perhaps Adrian Peterson in his game, not quite that physically freakish because Adrian Peterson is one of a kind. And I have him going 19th in this mock draft. Jacqueline, as you just pointed out, to Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay has a ton of needs, but I think he would certainly help offensively. But I wonder, is he going to go higher, or is he going to perhaps even go lower than that just because of how NFL teams value running backs these days? If he were coming out 15 years ago, he'd be a top 5 pick. If Dave Gettleman were still general manager, he'd be a top 5 pick. I don't know if he has that value in today's NFL, but he is special, and I give the man a lot of credit for explaining why he's opting out of the bowl game. He regrets it, but he also understands as a running back, there's only so much tread left on this tire, and I don't want to be, for lack of a better term, wasting it in a bowl game that doesn't matter in terms of where Texas ends up at the end of the season. So I love Bijan Robinson. I just don't know if he's going to have a ton of value in the NFL if we're talking inside the top 12 or 13 picks.
Man, I love Bijan Robinson. I think he's the top overall running back in this class, in part because of his size, but with that size, just some of his ability to be elusive, be physical, as Ryan touched on. Also his ability to catch the football and make something out in space. I mean, he is the entire package. I think the thing I appreciate about him the most is the way he subtly makes people miss in between the tackles. It's an art, and it's almost a lost art form with some of the running backs in today's game who don't like running in between the tackles. But you see the little stutter steps, the hesitation, the vision, the patience at times too for the hold to develop or the blocking to develop downfield. He is the entire package. I wouldn't be shocked if he doesn't go somewhere potentially in the top 10. I wouldn't be shocked if he didn't go somewhere, in the top, 20 when you look at where he could potentially go to, because a lot of teams could use a running back like him. The problem is teams don't put a premium on the running back position in the first round. But he's a guy I would, because he's a day one starter, the versatility that he brings, the system that he was asked to run to at Texas under Steve Sarkisian will prepare him for the next level. So love this back. I think it's the right fit. I'm not necessarily sure where the Bucs want to go, considering they have no idea what they're going to do at the quarterback spot. And that's probably the most important decision they make this offseason before they have to worry about the draft and where they're going with the running back.
Right, so let's move on from running backs over to tight ends. Ryan, you have 2 tight ends selected in the first round of your mock draft. One of them being Darnell Washington. Brady, you were having some words behind the scenes about that pick from Ryan. And it's the first time, Brady, since 2019 that 2 tight ends are being drafted in the first round.
Yeah, 6 times since 2000. And so kind of unique. And I think when you go back through the years too, it really hasn't happened that often. I think the 2017 draft might be the other draft that it's happened in recent history. But another position that a lot of teams just don't put a high priority on. They look at them and they say, hey, these are guys we can probably get in the second, third round. Washington's the type of player that just an absolute physical freak, a behemoth of a man as we go back and look at that 2019 draft class with TJ Hawkinson and Noah Fant, 2 teammates, both going to the top 20 of the first round. I'm sure the Iowa Hawkeye fans are still running, how in the heck they didn't have more offense out of those 2 while they're in college. But I digress. Darnell Washington is a physical freak. I mean, he will absolutely maul people up front as a blocking tight end. He can help out in pass pro, but he's also a big-time size mismatch for a lot of defensive backs out there. But he's also, able to kind of shake and move well enough versus the bigger defenders he can go up against. So I could see why he's in this spot. I think he will test well. Michael Mayer is the one that makes the most sense if you're going to take a tight end in the first round, based on the guys who are eligible, who have declared, and also the guys that have put up the tape like he has. So I don't think I have any reservations about what you're getting from him when he gets there. So he should be tight end 1. Washington's an intriguing figure, though. I haven't seen many mocks with 2 tight ends in the first round, Ryan. So kudos to you with this move.
This is a really deep tight end class, too. Dalton Kincaid out of Utah, Luke Musgrave out of Oregon State. There are going to be a ton of guys that we're going to be talking about as we get through this process. But Michael Mayer is the clear-cut number 1 for me. And he is the complete package. When you talk about Darnell Washington, he's a little raw, especially in the pass game. Now, he is long, and he is basically the most athletic, look at this, left tackle you've ever seen, who can also catch the football, because he does, as Brady notes, block his behind off, and then he can also be a huge target in the red zone. Now, it's funny because when you talk about Georgia tight ends, you start with Bowers, and he's not draft eligible. But Darnell Washington, I don't know if he will be a better NFL player than Brock Bowers, but he's going to be a really special player if he's able to meet all the expectations that you have in him based on what we've seen, the glimpses of that ability. So does he sneak into the first round? I can't guarantee you that. I love the idea of him going to Kansas City just as an example of a team solidifying their offensive line with his blocking and also giving Travis Kelce a little break with another weapon in the middle of the field. But I think at the end of the day, if these guys don't have this run in the first round after Michael Mayer, we'll see a run on these tight ends in the second round and probably early the third round because they are so unique given how the offenses have changed at the high school level, trickled up to college, and making their way to the NFL.
All right, TCU's Mac Duggan announcing yesterday that he's going to enter the NFL draft after he's done playing in the college football playoff. Brady, is that something you were expecting from him?
Yeah, I think at this point in time, you look at the year he had, it really can't get much better than that. Won a bunch of awards, finished second in the Heisman, had a dream season, now the chance to win a national championship. So why not try to ride out on a high note? He's played college football for quite some time now, so capitalize off that and see if you have a shot to go play at the NFL level. I'm more curious, Ryan, where do you see him amongst this group of quarterbacks? He wasn't a guy that a lot of people necessarily placed, being a part of this first-round group. I think if you look at the film this year, you have to be impressed with his toughness, with his downfield passing ability, but he does have a bounty of really talented wide receivers. Quentin Johnston in particular, that is your top wide receiver in this year's draft class.
Yeah, I'm laughing because when you watch TCU play offensively, he's throwing to a bunch of wide open dudes down the field, in part because Quentin Johnston's so dangerous. You can't knock him for throwing to wide open guys. We said that about Justin Fields at Ohio State, but it's hard to get a true evaluation of what that translates to at the next level because that doesn't happen very often. So that's the concern. But you're exactly right. He's incredibly tough. He's he'll be one of the toughest kids in this entire draft class. He wins a lot with his legs. He's not established as a passer right now where you would like him to be. He feels like a day 3 developmental guy, and that's no disrespect. That's just the reality. And you look at names that are going to be going on day 3. Spencer Rattler, if he comes out, he's going to be a day 3 guy almost certainly. Aiden O'Connell is a guy at Purdue who's a tough as nails type player, not the athlete that Max Duggan is, but has made a ton of plays this year for Purdue. And I think Max Duggan and Stetson Bennett are going to be in that conversation as well when we get into day 3 and teams want developmental quarterbacks who are going to be great leaders in the locker room, even if it means being on the practice squad for a year or two. I think that's where we're going to see Max Duggan. Now, Rick Spielman, the general manager, longtime general manager of Vikings, who does the picks, the podcast with me, with the First Pick podcast, compared him to Trace McSorley, and I sort of like that comp. They're not the exact same size, but in terms of what they do physically, they can throw the ball down the field a little bit, and they can certainly win with their legs. There's a place in the NFL for Trace McSorley, so there's probably a place for Max Duggan, just not as a starter in the first few years.
I don't know, based on Trace's performance this past weekend, Ryan, if that's obviously what you want to key in on there with the way Trace had played at the spot work for Colt McCoy. I digress, though. You know, we saw him a little bit in there, and he struggled. But the one thing he does have is he does have that running ability that I think you have to have in today's NFL. You have to be able to move in the pocket. You have to be able to take off and run, be a part of the run game. Those are all things that are going to bode well. And I think he is a better passer. People give him credit. It'll just be interesting to see how that passing attack that Sonny Dykes coaches down there, how it translates to the NFL. Now, I'll put it this way. If it's anything close to what we've seen from Jared Goff during his time in the NFL, he's going to be able to sling it and push the ball downfield vertically, which is also something that talent evaluators are looking for. So I give him the benefit of the doubt. I think he's going to be an interesting prospect to see where he goes.
All right, let's talk about the QB situation over at Oregon. It was kind of up in the air. Is Bo Nix going to come back? Is he not? He is returning to Oregon for the 2023 season. Do you think this was the right move for Bo Nix, Brady?
I think it was an interesting move. I mean, I'll be honest with you. I thought for sure Bo Nix would want to try to join this quarterback draft class, and in part, too, because this class isn't as viewed with as many solidified top guys. When you look at next year's class in 2024, I should say in 2 years from now, Caleb Williams and Drake May. Like right now, there's already teams lining up to potentially put themselves in position to get one of those two guys or either one of those two guys. That's how teams are looking at that draft class so far, and that's not even taking into consideration some of the other potential prospects we'll have in that draft class. So now he's opening the door to really being a part of that group, and I would say he's not going to change my mind on how I feel about the top two guys. So at best, he's three. In this class, again, based on Bryce Young, he's my number one guy, but I look at his size and that doesn't bother me as much. It might bother other teams more. They might look at Will Levis and Anthony Richardson and their inconsistencies and say, those guys aren't ready yet. We don't want to draft them that spot and throw them in there before they're ready. So maybe he would have been a better fit in this draft class based on some of the question marks, some of the prospects. Ryan, where would you have had him going, if he did come out and declare for this year's draft?
I'm with you in terms of the thought process with Bo Nix. And it's funny, Brady, because I watched Bo Nix early in the year with very low expectations based on what I saw at Auburn. And I was blown away. I was like, okay, this guy can play a little bit. And I kept watching and kept being impressed. And I was talking to some West Coast scouts about him, and they said, you know what? He's going to be a day two guy if he comes out. That was the thinking and what I'd heard around the league about Bo Nix and the way he played. But there was no certainty that he was going to, in fact, come out. And I think you make a good point about the competition next year. You mentioned Drake May and Caleb Williams. Quinn Ewers could be in that conversation. Devin Leary came back. Tyler Van Dyke came back. Michael Penix came back. We'll see what happens with Cam Ward at Washington State, who had a really good year. So the competition could be stiffer, no doubt about it. But I was impressed with what Bo Nix did, and if he had ended up going on day two, whether that's late second somehow or even early third, it wouldn't have surprised me based on the way he played this year for Oregon. It was a good season for him, and apparently he wants to try to improve on that next year.
And let's not forget, too, you lose your offensive coordinator to Arizona State as the head coach, too. So that might be something that's a little bit concerning if you have to start over there, learning from a different play caller and developing that chemistry with them. That's not easy to do.
Right, and it's interesting, Ryan and I have talked about it before in the mock draft, especially with this class, you're talking about how there's not like a clear-cut, this guy is the all-star number one. You have Bryce Young, but he is a smaller guy, and then it's like you're dealing with that great skill set, leading Bama in the offense, and then you have on the other side guys like Will Levis, AR, who are just physically have those tools, but maybe are inconsistent. So
there's a lot of guys, a lot of names. I mean, Hendon Hooker had a tremendous season before he gets injured. I mean, he really, in my opinion, I think changed a lot of people's minds on how people thought about him. So he's another guy to consider. And then the guy that everyone's kind of leaving out is C.J. Stroud, one of the most accurate passers in a clean pocket you'll find, maybe the most in this draft class, who's got the arm strength, who's got all the ability, who's incredibly prolific during his time at Ohio State. So he's another guy that factors into that mix.
Packers typically have shied away from taking receivers in the first round. But Ryan, we'll start with you. Why do you think this time is different? We'll actually start with you, Brady. What's different about, I guess, this year and the Packers and their need for that position?
Well, I mean, Christian Watson obviously you feel like he's filled that need at this point, at least the way he's developed over the course of the season. So maybe this is not a move they want to end up taking, but I think the thought would probably be, what happens with Aaron Rodgers? Is he coming back? Is this going to end up being Jordan Love's team? What does he want to do? You probably have to figure that out first, and he's going to factor into that decision most likely if he is indeed still staying on this roster and going to continue to play out the contract that he signed this past offseason. If it's not, it's really, really trying to get Jordan Love some help if he's your quarterback in the future, if they're going that route. But bottom line is, if you look at Quentin Johnston, the way he played this past season, for a guy that's that big of a catch radius, he's going to run one of the faster 40-yard dash times you're going to see out there. I think the only question you might have when you watch the tape with some of it is durability, and then on top of that, is he going to be able to translate that system and what he's asked to do within that system to the NFL level? I think when you're looking at some of the more precise route runners and guys who, to me, jump off the screen as more NFL ready, Jordan Addison, which is the next wide receiver I believe on this list, he's the guy that stands out that can kind of have that Garrett Wilson type impact like Garrett Wilson has had for the New York Jets, and they're a little bit more, slight of frame, similar in size as compared to Quentin Johnston. So I believe we got Ryan back now. Yeah. So Ryan, you want to weigh in on this?
Yeah, thanks for the filibustering there, Brady. Let me tell you something. Few things more humbling than your face freezing in a terrible pose for a good 15 seconds. You thought I was just making faces at the conversation. No, Aaron Rodgers didn't want me to talk about a wide receiver going to Green Bay. But, yeah, Quentin Johnston is a physical freak. We talked about him last segment in terms of what he did for Max Duggan and that TCU offense. And it's been since 2002 since the Packers drafted a wide receiver. As Brady noted, we have no idea what Aaron Rodgers' future holds or what Jordan Love's future holds in Green Bay. But for the love of God, whoever is the quarterback, please get them a wide receiver. As we sit here, Alan Lazard leads the team in catches, which is okay. But, Aaron Jones is second. He's a running back, and he's a very good running back and a great pass receiver out of the backfield. But you don't want him getting the majority of the targets. They just cut Sammy Watkins. This feels like a layup to me. Now, I've said that in the past. This wide receiver group, as you mentioned, Jacqueline, coming in, isn't quite as deep as it has been in the last few years. So if you need a wide receiver, Green Bay, please, for the love of all that's holy, if Quentin Johnston's there, just take him. You will not regret it.
Ryan Wilson might be freezing up again if he keeps talking about wide receivers there. We'll see, Ryan. Okay, Brady, you talked about Jordan Addison a little bit, and Ryan, you called him, quote, one of the most dynamic players in the country. You got him going 16 overall to New England. What do you think Jordan Addison could do for this Patriots offense? Ryan, we'll start with you.
Well, the first question I'm asking him when you interview him at the Combine is will you throw a pass backwards at the end of a football game that's tied, or will you let it go to overtime? Because that's important. And once you get the answer to that question, then you say, can you get open down the field consistently? And yes, obviously, that is what he did in spades at Pitt. He was a big part of Kenny Pickett's sort of resurgence last year and helped Kenny get into the first round with his play. And he's parlayed that at USC with Caleb Williams and taking that offense to the next level. And he's undersized. He probably weighs 175. We'll see exactly where he's at by the time we get around to the Combine. But he probably plays about the 175, 180 range. And that's something you can get over. Typically, you don't like your receivers to be that light, but he plays much bigger than that. He plays much stronger than that. He is a danger at all three levels. He offers something in a return game, and he gives something the Patriots lack, a dynamic threat on the outside. That offense has sputtered this year for any number of reasons, whether you want to talk about the quarterback or the play caller or the lack of playmakers. Jordan Addison solves a lot of problems with just that one single selection. And, if he's there, he makes a ton of sense for New England.
He's blazing fast off the line. Teams, or I should say players, don't like to play press man-to-man coverage with it. And when you get up to the NFL level, the nice thing is if you're looking at some of these smaller wide receivers who've had success, it's in part because, illegal contacts being called more and more. That was a point of emphasis this offseason, defensive holding as well, along with DPI. So, these guys are playing to a benefit, being slight of frame, but being quicker off the line and faster downfield. Jordan Addison is one of the most complete receivers coming into this draft class as far as the short, intermediate, and deep routes. He's got tremendous hands. He was a Blitnikoff winner a couple of years ago, and you saw some of the highlights from his time with USC this past season. And really, they just had kind of a bounty of riches there with Caleb Williams. And Caleb Williams probably overshadowed him because of how good he was as a player for Southern Cal this year. But I wouldn't be shocked if Jordan Addison wasn't the first wide receiver taking in this year's draft class because of Garrett Wilson's impact and how similar they seem to me as far as their size, frame, but overall NFL readiness that you're going to get from a guy like Addison day one, right when he steps into camp.
Okay, so moving along to Jackson Smith and Jigba. Ryan has him going 20 overall in his latest mock draft over to the Titans. He's dealt with his fair share of injuries, hasn't seen the field as much this past year. How do you compare him to the other guys in this class?
It's a big question mark, honestly. I mean, because we haven't seen him. Dealt with a hamstring injury all year, which is pretty rare. And so I think there's questions about that. There's questions about potentially how fast he is. How does he stack up versus Quentin Johnson, Jordan Addison, two guys who I can assure you are 4.4 guys, maybe even sub 4.4, depending on what their start ends up looking like. You go back a couple years ago, I mean, Jackson Smith and Jigba was the receiver that really stood out amongst two other guys we talked about just a moment ago in the first round in Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave. So, really when you're looking at what he's capable of, I think as far as route running, it's precise. He's got tremendous hands. He's tough running with the football after the catch. All those things are great. Just haven't seen it for a couple of years. So those are things that I think would concern me a bit. And Ryan, the other thing is just his ability to separate. I don't think you worried about that with Olave and Garrett Wilson, depending on his 40 time. That's one thing when I watch him on tape. He doesn't look like a burner like some of the other receivers we've seen, or maybe even some of the other receivers in this draft class.
And Brady, really quickly, Jalen Hyatt, Ryan had him going 28 overall to the Dallas Cowboys. And Ryan and I have talked about him before. Wasn't really much in the first round conversation early on in the season. I guess what has changed, in your opinion, to now make him one of the guys that we're talking about?
Yeah, he won the Blitnikoff for the best receiver in college football. So that's probably the first thing is just his overall big playmaking ability that you're seeing at the NFL level. Everyone's looking for. They're looking for ways of getting chunk plays. That's what the NFL is about. And they're looking for playmakers who can do it. And clearly, Jalen Hyatt can do it. I think the concerns aren't going to be with the speed. It's not going to be with his ability to make those plays downfield. It's going to be, can he do the rest of what's required? Because if you look at that Tennessee offense and Josh Heupel offense, it's very abnormal compared to what he's going to be asked to do at the NFL level. You don't see those wide splits with really you're running only a handful of routes and some variations of that. He's going to be asked to do a lot more. He's going to be moved around a lot more than how he was moved and utilized during his time at Tennessee. So can he handle that? Can he get used to an NFL-style offense? Those are the only question marks that you have. But he's a blazer, he's a burner, he's a big-time playmaker, and he'd be a great complement to CeeDee Lamb on that roster in Dallas to help out Dak Prescott and helping out the passing game.
Yeah, absolutely. Their defense is in pretty good shape. I feel like the other side of the ball is where they need a little bit of help. Brady Quinn here. We did have Ryan Wilson for a moment as well until we lost him because of technical difficulties. Breaking down the wide receivers that he thinks are going to be selected in the first round. You can hear Ryan Wilson with a little bit of better reception on his podcast with the first pick alongside Rick Spielman. In the very latest episode, they're talking about some under-the-radar draft prospects that you need to know about. You can download and listen wherever you get your podcast, and you can also scan that QR code on your screen.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.